appreciate being here. And let's do this for the third week in a row. We've been responsible.
Yeah, right. It's finally happening.
Yeah, I know. Talking about it for like 2 years. And now we're putting out a podcast every week. So let's go over this first. The biggest story here, sort of the biggest story over here. It's sort of like a Rangers-Devils situation, if I have to make a hockey comparison. A Rangers loss is bigger news than a Devils win. And the reason for that is, I think, is money. A Rangers loss is going to attract more eyes. This incredible story, I don't know, would you call it a treble if they win all three? Because they're on their way to do it? Leverkusen?
I mean, it's a treble of sorts.
It's not the treble.
The treble, but it is a treble, I suppose, yeah.
Well, I mean, Celtic won a treble last year, right? So, but it wasn't the treble, for obvious, and that certainly was a good season for them. But this is a lot bigger because it's European League they're looking at. And the Celtics won, both Scottish Cups, in the league. This is a much bigger story, and the fact that we are now in April and these teams are still undefeated, which is just very difficult to fathom. And on top of that, 11-year-in-a-row champion Bayern, who's getting more press for losing, looks like they're out of it as far as contention for the league. I was told, not too accurately, that they could clinch in 2 weeks. I don't know if you use that. Did you use that expression over here? Clinch?
I mean, someone's clinched the title. Yeah, I suppose it's something that is said.
Yeah, that's something we use. If you clinch the playoffs, you've clinched the postseason, something like that. Of course, they don't really have a postseason in European football, but I found this little fact. The earliest date, which can be confirmed as champions, would be match day 29, April 13th or 14th. That assumes Leverkusen has beat Union and Bremen, which is very possible. And Bayern loses both Heidenheim and Cologne. Now, of those two, Cologne has the best chance. Heidenheim has none. Although, it's one of those teams that they play with It wouldn't totally shock me if they win, but it would be one of those situations where nobody saw it coming, and Bayern didn't take them seriously because they're fighters. They fought their way up. They won the second league last year. They looked like they were going to be be relegated. Now they've kind of worked their way up through the league where they might be safe from relegation. They're a fighting team. I'm going to change that. I think Heidenheim has more of a chance to upset just by the fact that they won't be taken seriously, just by the fact that they're a well-coached team, and just by the fact that they're fighters. So, yeah, if anybody's got a shot, I'm going to give it to Heidenheim. Nobody will see them coming. That being said, clinching in 2 weeks, this is not possible. This is just a scenario. Bayern have any chance to drop 2 in a row?
I mean, yeah, they have a chance. I mean,
yeah. I mean, realistically,
go down because they might see it as everyone else does now that the title's over. So maybe they just don't care anymore, and they somehow lose. Who knows? But
that's good fun.
It's gonna be amazing if they do lose those two and Leverkusen seal the title.
That would be funny, and with more than a month to go in the season, that would be nothing short of amazing. I have to bring this up. You are wearing a fur coat. I've decided to wear just a regular plaid shirt. You decided to go with a fur coat. Is there any reason? Do you hate weasels, or like what's with the fur coat?
They're just my mortal enemy, weasels.
Is that what that's made of? Minks are basically weasels, right?
Yeah, it's a statement. It's my stand against the weasels.
What do they call them? Minks? Or
it's a mink coat, right?
Yeah, it's a mink coat. Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it made from real minks? I bet it isn't.
It's not. It's for all the people worried.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I could care less if you wore one. I'll be perfectly honest with you. All right, let's watch new Champions League format this year. The more and more I see it, the more and more I like it. I don't think anybody denies that the new system is probably to chase away the Super League, which if this works, that's great. It's kind of interesting because you don't have a if you qualify for Champions League, you're not going to have a group stage format. You don't know who you're playing, and you could get some really crazy matchups. I mean, you could get big matchups very early, really important matchups. And I'll let this gentleman right here explain it to you.
I really like it, to be honest. I like the idea that you're going to play different. You don't get the repeat matchups that you get in the group stages where you play the same teams twice. I like that we're going to have new matches every single time. So you're going to see like Leverkusen next season are going to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be really exciting to see how they do against different teams rather than just the same three, maybe.
You're also going to get matchups like Man City, Barcelona right out the gate because they didn't go over it. They didn't go over it. These pots, they're from what I understand, they're really financial levels. The top would be the Manchester Uniteds, the super big clubs, or maybe based on success. So. And from what I understand, a guy's going to pull something out of the hat, and then the algorithm's going to take over. I'm sure the conspiracy theorists will not be satisfied. Green Man talked about heated bowls. The whole thing's fixed, but now it's going to be by hand and computer. I guess it just depends on how much you trust UEFA. But the way the system looks, it looks like it could be fair. Because like you're gonna get one pot, pot one would be basically quality of team or where they finished up the year prior. Pot two would be a little lower, so you're gonna get all ranges of teams in these 8 games. The big problem that I see, and I'm no mathematician, I fear a team that played a weak team early and just absolutely blew them out would make the difference between qualifying and not qualifying. I could see a scenario like that, or maybe not getting into the round of 16. And is that really fair? Maybe you're shaky the whole time, but you had one 10-0 game against some Greek team or something like that. Well, I guess the Greeks don't play anymore, do they? It was something along those lines I could see being sort of problematic. But other than that, I mean, big games early, it only adds just a few more games to Champions League, which I think is the players and the coach's biggest problem. But I can't. I'm excited about it. I really don't see a downside, except for places like Scotland. I really the teams and maybe even the Netherlands and Portugal and stuff like that. Those leagues that are just on the cusp, they're just behind. They may be really exciting, really fun leagues. Good. I think the developmental leagues will have the biggest problem. Because they're going up against, again they could be put in a pot with, they could be put in a group stage with Man City and, and Barcelona too. I suppose that could happen. Every team plays each other once, and then I see a situation like Celtic. Well, there's always a chance that if they finish third, they could drop down. No more drop downs. Do you have a problem with that?
I have the opposite. I like that.
There's no more. Yeah, because then it keeps the Liverpools from dropping down and then cleaning up in the Europa League. I have to agree with you, but I think it's going to be difficult, and we'll see for teams like Celtic, and other clubs that are just on the cusp. Multi-goal games are so important in this. But there is 8 games. You're going to play 8 different squads, which is awesome. And if it chases away the Super League, which the more I spend time on this, I think it's a lot better. I think it'd be a lot more fun not to have a Super League, because I think a Super League would be a closed league, and a closed league would be disastrous for European culture and football. Just utterly disastrous. So I don't know. What is your total takeaway? Does it take away the Super League? Is this overly complicated? I really don't find it terribly complicated. What's your downside as well as your positives?
Well, I think I don't know if it permanently chases away the Super League, but obviously with the new coefficients and whatnot, it helps to go against that. I don't think it's that complicated. I think once we've had a season of it, everyone will sort of understand it.
Yeah.
And one of the positives I think is really underrated about this is that the top 8, I think he said it was, go straight through.
Yes.
I think that can make a huge difference for teams now. Like if you're a City and you do really well in your groups, like first few games, you get through. You're skipping a whole stage of the tournament, which makes your run to the final easier. Which could also give us some really interesting ones where, like a Leverkusen, for example, again,
Sure.
they have a really good first few games. They sneak into that top 8 where you would have expected like the Real Madrids to be. Instantly you've got a team that is like they've really benefited from playing well early on, and maybe they steal a win against like one of the pot 1 teams or whatever that they have to play, and then they go further in a tournament because they get to jump through one of the stages by finishing in the top 8.
Top 8, yeah.
So I really like that. But yeah, I think you definitely raise valid concerns there for leagues like the Eredivisie or Scotland, where like a Celtic or a PSV Eindhoven, maybe they're not quite good enough to get through to the next round normally, but they're stuck playing Champions League because they can't drop into like the Europa League where they're going to be more competitive because as champions of their league, they go up to the Champions League. So I think that's definitely a valid concern. And the goal difference thing is, yeah, it might be annoying, but at the same time, I suppose it just comes down to luck of the draw, which is for a lot of what the group stages now come down to luck of the draw.
And that also brings out the conspiracy nuts. Like everybody, it's all fixed. But I mean, doing it the old way, you could just get a group. Every year there's a group of death, and this is not exactly a group of death. I mean, on paper it sounds more fair, if that's a good English way to put it. It doesn't sound like good English, but yeah, I guess we have to give it a shot. And if it does chase away the Super League, at least for the time being, I think it would be fine. My biggest problem with the Super League is not even the Super League. It's the fact that the people that want it are American. They want the league closed, and because people that don't live in Europe don't realize that travel is a part of supporting your team. That's not really possible in the United States, so they're not even thinking about that. But the ultra groups going from city to city, you can, the farthest place you can drive in Germany is about 7 hours. So like just about every stadium is doable in the country. In England too. England the same way. If you have a closed league, that's gone. And the reason I enjoy watching second, third league teams in Germany, I probably. The reason you go to Braintree every week is it's just the dream of being promoted to the next league, and that's just crushed. The only way I'd be for a Super League is because I get the reason for it, because there's a financial even if the Netherlands economy approves tenfold, it's not going to be as big as economy. And these are things that are outside of football, as in England, as in France, as in Italy. It's just not going to happen. There's not enough people, right? So these teams are at a disadvantage economically, not because they're poor countries, because they simply don't have the population to generate the economy to get that kind of, or the population to get the support to compete with a Man City, to compete with any kind of London club. So I can understand that such a financial disparity is a thing, but I got to be honest with you, I think this might be the best system, at least in the meantime, to quell that a little bit, especially since you're playing a different team in the opening round every single time, and you're not getting pounded by Man City twice. You're not getting pounded by Barcelona or Real Madrid twice. So that's just the way I'll take it. Messi, not that 4 games he has missed now in the MLS. Very disappointing. And he does seem to be returning for Champions Cup, which it's basically Champions League for CONCACAF. Seems to me that Tata Martino is a little more interested in winning that than the MLS, maybe because everybody makes the playoffs. How do you feel about that? Is this the right thing to do? Because it's not like Champions Cup is, when I say it's like Champions League, I said it's like Champions League, right? It does not draw outside of Mexico like MLS does, or Liga MX. It does not have the support usually until the very the semifinal, final rounds. So I guess my question to you is he really hurt? Are they just saving him, which it looks like? And is it right to do that if he's not hurt?
Well, obviously, as a European, I don't know too much about how American fans would feel about the mentality of prioritizing the Champions Cup. Because I suppose, from Martino's point of view, maybe he doesn't value finishing first in the MLS,
Mm-hmm.
like, as much as winning the playoffs and winning the Champions Cup. Maybe he's thinking, look, we're going to make the playoffs anyway, so we can focus on the Champions Cup now and win the playoffs later on, because that's the big thing, right? Maybe in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Americans view it differently to that.
I
So
think they
maybe
do.
that's the thinking behind that. Which again, like, as a European, that I get that thinking. That's probably how I see it,
Mm-hmm.
like he would. But yeah, I don't know. Like, as an American, what do you think? Like,
Well,
do you think finishing first is more valuable, or is it just about making the
I got to
playoffs?
be honest with you. Most of the people that are get attracted to NLS are new to soccer. They're new to football, and they're looking into the guise of the NHL, NBA, MLB, NFL. So the championship is the MLS Cup is the most important thing. MLS regular season games are the most important thing. But from my perspective, I guess maybe being a little I don't know. I haven't lived at home for a long time, so I can't say that I'm smarter than the average fan, the American fan. I want to win a continental title. So maybe I don't. If I'm a Miami fan, I don't like the fact that he's not there. But some more support to this continental tournament, which is a much harder. If I'm not mistaken, only one American team's won it, and that's only recently, Seattle Sounders. And maybe more support for a continental title would be better for the MLS long term, and would probably because it would get more respect worldwide. Winning a continental title, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of across like what it depends on what league you're in over here. Like obviously, win the Prem is kind of the biggest, but you know, a Champions League championship is world big. So I think as far as getting a league respect, if Miami pulls that off and and they grab a trophy there, um, I think that would be good considering they're like you said they're probably going to at least back into the playoffs and get a shot at MLS Cup. So,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of luck in MLS Cup. It's a kind of a short tournament. You get a 3-game series right off the bat, which I thought I was going to like, and I ended up hating it. And everything else is just 1-game eliminations after that. So, one screw up, one own goal, you're out. But yeah, I think from a football's perspective, it's more important to win Champions Cup. But I don't know if it's the right move financially for MLS and near Miami, but I can see Tata thinks that's more important. If that be the case, maybe he just got better around this time too. I don't know, but it does sort of feel like they're saving him, and that's the priority, not MLS, the
yeah.
Champions Cup. So I don't know.
Well, I just have a question, quick. So, out of the American sports, I only really watch the NBA, and I know in the NBA, like the regular season isn't like really important to players and teams there. It's sort of as long as you make the playoffs, it's the playoffs that matters.
Yes.
Is it the same thinking in the MLS where like these games now in the MLS don't really matter as long as you make the playoffs, or is finishing first in this stage of the MLS
Well,
more
the
important?
season's shorter. It's more like an American football season. So I wouldn't say the regular season is worthless, but it probably doesn't hold as much value as it definitely doesn't hold much value as like trying to win the Prem or trying to win Serie A or something like that for sure. Most teams make the playoffs, and that's definitely I think the priority for the average MLS fan is win the MLS Cup for sure. But I would say, unlike the other sports, there is more emphasis on winning the league, the Supporters Shield, and winning and making the playoffs than maybe some of the other sports, just because of the soccer spillover from Europe, from South America. But I think in general, if you ask sort of your average, maybe he's an MLS fan, but he follows the other sports, you're gonna ask. You might not even know what Champions Cup is. He might even know it's available. I mean, you could tell. You watch teams like St. Louis, you watch teams like Miami, you watch teams when like LA, they got packed stadiums for MLS games, and they don't have them at the Champions Cup. So the Americans, I don't understand multi-league play, that it's not about winning a single championship, because that's difficult for them to get their mind around. And it's about winning as many championships you can in a season. I think, but if Messi wins the Champions Cup, that may bring more attention and more money long term,
Yeah.
even to MLS. So I don't know where they're going with it, but no, I don't. I think your average MLS fan probably likes is getting interested. Sort of like if you I always like to use I show Speed as a good example. Like he's being brought into it. You're seeing his whole fandom kind of grow. I don't know if how much he understands about, or maybe he does now. When he started becoming a fan about promotion, relegation, multi-league play, multi-competition play, I don't. Maybe he gets it now. But I know when I watch Champion, and I do stay up late, and I watch Champions Cup, used to be called Champions League last year. It's not packed, so they don't get it. And the football's better because you're playing, top flight Costa Rican teams. You're playing top flight Mexican teams. It's a much higher level of play, and I think it would be a more valuable trophy than it would winning the league or even MLS Cup. So maybe if Messi wins it, then it brings attention, and then Americans go, oh, there's the league, there's Leagues Cup, there's MLS Cup, and there's this. There's 4. Because the U.S. Open Cup's been destroyed, but that's a story for another time. Tonight we're going to be covering the we call it a rags to riches story? Well, just the impossible story of Saarbrücken going up against another second league Kaiserslautern. For you Englishmen out there, this is essentially the Deutsche Pokal. It's essentially the FA Cup, and we are in the semifinals, and we have a third league team and a second league team. And in the other, we have a second league team and going up against Leverkusen. That'll take place tomorrow. Tonight, we're going to be doing a watch along here, or at least at the time that this was recorded. And as you can see, this has been pretty amazing. They've knocked off Bayern. They've knocked off Frankfurt. They knocked off Gladbach in the 90th minute, which was an incredible finish. The drama is just incredible. And if for some reason, you can forget the Champions League final. If for some reason they knock off a Leverkusen at the final, and the first they got to beat Kaiserslautern first, that's the biggest story in football this year. It's still one of the top 10, 5. I would say it's one of the top 5 stories in football, European football all year. If for some reason they pull off a miracle and beat a potential invincible, that's got to be the biggest shocker in the world. Do they have any chance, in your opinion?
I mean, technically, yes. There is a possibility that they win it. Mm-hmm. Realistically, no, not a chance in hell.
No.
They've beaten some really good sides, but Leverkusen haven't lost a game yet. Are they going to lose to a third tier side?
They're dead center of they're dead center of the third league. It's not like they're rocking it. They're 10, 13, and 6. Which isn't terrible. I mean, you're not getting relegated, but you're not looking to get promoted either. It's it is really incredible. And we did the last game, and we're gonna do another game tonight. But talk about like insane. It seems that it's funny. Like when this team's in trouble, they get like Leverkusen, especially in the 90th minute. Leverkusen's got this knack to, all right, they're finally gonna lose one. And they Florian Ritz goes out there and pulls out a miracle, one after another. And that's what Saarbrücken does when they're against the wall. And Kaiserslautern is technically the weakest team they faced. It really is incredible.
So this is the one they're losing then?
Yeah, I thought it might be. Would it be funny if they lost to Borussia, not Dortmund, Munich Gladbach? And like, oh wow, well, they beat Bayern and Frankfurt and they'll lose to Gladbach. But no, it looks like it's going to be Kaiserslautern, the team my team beat this year, which is a second league team, Van Wiesbaden. So it really, this is for some reason, if you're watching this and Saarbrücken had beaten Kaiserslautern, really get ready for a really incredible final.
I think. Just quickly, I think what's gone on in Germany this year is a great advertisement for why it's worth looking at leagues outside of your own country. Because you've got the story of Bayer Leverkusen, who are invincibles right now, stealing the title away from Bayern Munich, playing unbelievable. Mm-hmm. That's a cool story in itself. You've got Saarbrücken making the semi-final of the Pokal after knocking out Mönchengladbach Frankfurt and Bayern Munich, and you've got the story of Stuttgart going from relegation playoff last season to third in the Bundesliga this year, which no one's even mentioned because of how crazy the other two stories are.
Stories are.
Like, Germany is such a good advert this year for why it's worth looking at other leagues outside of your own, because there are so many cool stories that happen in football.
Yeah,
like,
the last
you limit
story
yourself so much.
Last year, it felt like it was just World Cup and Holland, and I guess Messi going to MLS. Those were the big stories. But yeah, it looks like all the big stories this year are in Germany. And Germany's got a great league, and there's also, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but there's the problem with the owners trying to get around 50+1. That's a discussion for another time. Selling advertising money. There's all sorts of protests and rebellions over here because one of the great things about the German league, it is the most supported. Bundesliga is the most supported league on the planet of any sport, percentage-wise, because it's cheap and you can afford it, and you can take your family there and get out and not having spent. And you can't do that anywhere in the United States with any sport that I'm aware of. And you really can't do that anywhere else in Europe, whether it would be Serie A, the Prem, or pretty much anywhere else outside of, like, not a Big Five country. This is the way the Germans have the system, and you have all these stories and all these great teams. And that leads me, actually, I kind of want to flip back a little bit. We didn't talk about this at all. Mr. XABI Alonso of Bayern Leverkusen, this is another huge story, has announced he did what I never thought he would. XABI Alonso has decided to stay. He's talked about it openly now. It's confirmed in Bayern Leverkusen. Maybe I'll give you the start this time. Why is it a bad move? Because we've talked about this before, and I'll go why it's a good move for XABI to you guys. It's because the story is Real Madrid and Liverpool, and XABI decided to turn it down. Why is that a bad move?
Well, if you're going to take the stance of why is it a bad move, for starters, the Leverkusen job, all right, they're doing really well now under him with some great players like Florian Wirtz. But then you've got people like Jeremy Frimpong, who's been one of the best players this season. He's being linked with moves away to places like even like Manchester United, who are in a much worse position, but they've got the money to attract someone like that. Granit Xhaka, I think he was linked elsewhere. Boniface, the striker, he's been linked to Premier League.
Even clubs. The centre backs like Ta as well are
Jonathan Tah's been linked away. So that's the thing. It's like, yeah, they've got this really good team that's playing really well under XABI Alonso. And I know Florian Wirtz has come out and basically confirmed he's staying another year himself. Mm-hmm. But you always have the worry that these other players might decide to cash in on their really good form and go to one of these big contracts abroad. So you could lose good players, and Leverkusen don't have the money to buy the biggest names to replace them. And so they have to take the chance on talent that they see, which might not work out, which then means you do worse off next season. Maybe you lose the title to Bayern again because they regroup, and you lose like a Frimpong and a Tar, for example. So there's always the risk of you losing good players. Whilst you look at the budgets that you would have had at Bayern Munich and Liverpool. Liverpool might win the title under Jurgen Klopp now, so they have a title potential winning side, which you're going to have big money to, which you can add players to. Bayern Munich maybe are having a down year, but you've got Kane, he's got a record-breaking first season for them, and they've got a huge budget, and there's talent there that isn't performing to a level that they should be, that if Alonso is a top coach, which he could be, will bring back out of them. So it could be a bad move in the sense that with Bayern Munich and Liverpool, the two main teams he's linked to, you've got bigger budgets, you're less likely to lose good players, and, it's easier to build long-term at a club like that than it would be at Leverkusen.
I don't think anything you said I could even possibly argue with as far as just, making good sense and making a good career choice. He can control what he does, but he can't control what the other players do. I guess my question to you after that is, do you think he's pretty sure those guys are staying? Is it possible they've all talked? Let's keep this going. Let's take this in the Champions League. I'll stay if you stay type of thing, maybe a handshake deal. Is it because, XABI's not a dopey guy. I think he understands, like, stepping in Jurgen Klopp's shoes is not enviable. I don't know. It's not a he wasn't like they don't win the league next year. He wasn't as good as we thought he was, and it's just that simple, that quick. And maybe even people up in Liverpool management, you put a guy in here that wasn't that experienced. He just had one fluke season. You threw him in. You can avoid all that by staying there. And I really don't, even if they finish up in second or fourth place, I don't think he loses that much clout, so to speak, to be able to coach. Do you think he's taken these guys aside and said, look, you want to do this next year, stick around, and I'll promise you I'll stay too. Is that possible, or is that even realistic?
Oh, I think, yeah, definitely that is something. Like with Wirtz coming out and saying he's going to stay, there definitely would have been talks, I reckon, potentially, especially with so many questions about XABI Alonso's future. Some of those players are going to have wanted to know his position because, like, let's say Alonso's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to take the Bayern Munich job. If you're like a Jeremy Frimpong, maybe you're thinking, well, the coach is leaving, maybe I should take my chance to leave. So I think, yeah, there certainly would have been some conversations with players where they want to know his stance so they can sort of plan their future as well. So certainly.
And that leads into what I'm saying, that what I think is the right reason to stay is because you can go to Liverpool and win, and it's been done before, and you certainly can go to the team that won the most Champions Leagues in Real Madrid. That's been done before, and you'll be a legend. But if you care about being a legend of a different order, doing something completely unique and completely different, I mean, the argument you made is they don't have the money to bring players in. There's a possibility to build a new European giant over here. And you don't get these opportunities. Opportunities like that are even more rare than being able to coach at Liverpool or Real Madrid or any of the big five top teams. This is huge. Absolutely huge. If like I said, I can't argue with anything you're saying, but I got to be honest, it's a lot more tempting for me to separate myself or have the opportunity to separate myself, and especially being as young as he is. What is he, only 42 years old? He didn't retire all that long ago. You could be in a class of your own, and then we're talking about, maybe 10 years from now, and Leverkusen's won 7 out of the last 10 years of the Bundesliga and had deep runs or a Champions League victory. He's now Leverkusen doesn't have the problem of not being able to attract players because now they're going to come over and they might be commanding the money. This is a chance to make a new European giant. I think much the way, although they were definitely a big club with Klopp and Dortmund. I mean, there's some similarities there. But I think when Klopp won the Champions League in Dortmund, they were much more solidified as a top European giant than they were in even 2005, 1995, 1985. It wasn't until after Klopp got there that they were, how many Champions League did they win prior to that? I think it was 0, right? Dortmund.
They didn't win one with Klopp. He got to the final.
Oh, that's right. He got to the final. I apologize. And then he went to Liverpool. Okay, I actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. But they did one. They won one. They won one right afterwards, correct? Or they never won one.
Dortmund never did. No, I think they won one in the 90s, but
then I got it confused.
They made the final. They made the final under Klopp.
That's it. That's right. They made the final.
Which is impressive enough as
it is. Sure. And that's probably what got his tickets to Liverpool. I'm getting my years and my stuff. But I mean, my point. Even though I completely bottled that, but my point is the same. My point doesn't change at all. And Lop did. I think Dortmund's a much bigger team than they were 20 years ago. I think that's fair to say, and I think that's because Klopp's leadership and his success, minus the Champions League. But you could do that with the Leverkusen. You could make them a top. I mean, like this story itself, if there's somebody able to put this sort of mini treble, for lack of a better word, now you got. I mean, football fans are. I mean, especially kids, they're like people my son's age. They see Leverkusen and they're winning. That's a team they connect with. That's a team they're going to follow. And I think if this thing happens, they could put themselves in potentially be, a power broker because I mean, look at United. They got all the money in the world. And they're not going to attract anybody. Where would you go right now if you could start? If you're a young player, I'd rather play for Leverkusen than United right now. I can't believe I'm saying that. I would rather play for Leverkusen than Chelsea. You know, if I want to go to, if I want to go to England, I want to go to Liverpool. I want to go to Man City, Arsenal, stuff like that. I mean, the teams that we're used to winning all the time are kind of out of the running. I think this would be an opportunity for Leverkusen to kind of jump to that next level in Europe. And maybe permanently put yourself there. I think that's a lot cooler than winning another championship from a very decorated club. I think that's the right reason to go. I think that's the yes reason to go. But it really, I guess it depends on what's important to you. And XABI's won it all as a player. Maybe it's not that important to him to do what so many other coaches have done before. It's definitely a way to separate himself. Would you agree?
It would be if he can pull it off. And that is a huge if. Yeah. Like, no matter how good he is as a coach. Yeah, like, obviously, Dortmund became big under Klopp, especially, obviously, bigger than they were before.
Sure.
But you're seeing that the influence wane already now. Like, we're talking about Leverkusen potentially winning the title. You know, it was Leipzig a couple of years ago who were almost winning it. Yeah, Dortmund came very close last season, but how many people actually remember that? Like, their influence is waning now that Klopp is gone. And, all right, yeah, he might be able to build Leverkusen up temporarily, but will it be a lasting legacy, or will it just be, time that XABI was there, they were good?
How many times, though, the reason I disagree with that, how many times has Dortmund blown it over the past 5-6 years since Klopp left? And they had the league wrapped up a few times, and they blew it. So, I mean, that's not Klopp's fault. That's the players dropping the ball. You know, I mean... So, I mean, I think it's almost a freak that they didn't close a deal on a league since then. It's almost bizarre, you know, that they weren't able to close it. It's almost like the law, like they defied the law of averages. I'm sure they didn't, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. I don't know. I think it's a lot cooler if he goes. Much cooler if he goes. Stays. Much cooler if he stays.
I definitely agree with the decision to stay. Like, I think that is the right choice, especially now, because if you're good enough, then it doesn't matter that he's turned down these big jobs now. If he's good enough, he'll get those big jobs in the future.
You know, he could go to. I mean, you got a lot more pressure in for a young coach, an inexperienced coach. There's a lot more pressure going to Liverpool and Real Madrid than there would be in Leverkusen. Leverkusen is just happy to have him. Just happy to have him. But I got to be honest with you. If you're right, and you know, a good, you know, 3 of these players that are so important to this team ditch, it probably wasn't worth it. And then I'm 100% wrong. But if you could if those guys could assure you that let's you know, we built this team, we're going to the Champions League next year, let's do this together, then I think it's the right move. And it's just as big a gamble as assuming he has the players, because at times this team does look like a Champions League team, and they certainly can dig themselves out of a hole. They could be improved. That's another thing. They could be improved next year with some good transfers and some wonderful stuff, or maybe getting contributions from guys that you don't expect to give contributions. So I really like the move. I think it's a ballsy move, and you know, assuming that some of those players stay. All right, let's go on to some other stuff. Again, Leverkusen, Dusseldorf. That'll be tomorrow. I don't want to sit like what time? I guess I should. It's 7:45 UK time. That's probably the smartest one to do. And of course, these are the guys right here. That's a nice little picture. And I'm gonna get in that in a minute. I wanted to play this for you because I know you're a big fan of this.
Can I ask you about Jack Grealish? After the game, you obviously had a chat with him on the pitch. I just wonder, we've seen you do that sort of thing with players before. What's the thinking behind speaking to a player on the pitch, or obviously with the cameras around, the crowd around, versus waiting for the dressing room?
Yeah, I do it for the cameras, for my ego.
I know you don't do it for the cameras. I'm just asking you what your thinking is, why it's important to get that message in that
No,
moment.
I'm the famous person of the team. And I don't recognize, and I need the cameras to my ego go to sleep with incredible satisfaction. So that is the reason why. So always I try to criticize the players there and let them feel that how bad they are, and especially when Erling scores 3 goals, the compliments has to be with me, not with them. That's why I use the cameras to do it there. So my advice.
Now he's done this before, but this is like he usually does it from a fun place, and you're not sure what he's saying. He's dripping with sarcasm.
Oh, yeah.
It's not. It almost looks like he's been able to do this in the past without seeming like he's angry. He definitely seems angry right now. Perhaps it's because of the result over the weekend.
Yeah, probably
0-0. Chance to basically replace Liverpool. Liverpool gets a little lucky. They're still in third place, I guess, right? Or
City are, yeah.
Yeah, they're still
City
in third place.
Third, I believe.
Yeah.
Arsenal second, Liverpool top.
Speaking of that game, I did doze off during it. Liverpool and I'm sorry, Arsenal, Man City. Excuse me. Was that a case of both teams just played so well they couldn't crack each other's codes, or was it poorly played? Like when I saw it, I take a hats off to their defenses. They didn't look like they were giving up a lot of chances. Both teams weren't giving each other like it seemed like both teams had the ball, but nobody could really create a chance in the final third. Is that good play, or is that bad play, or is it just like, are these teams just so razor close? Like, what happened on Sunday?
Well, my interpretation was it was good defending mixed with caution from both sides. To me, it looked like both teams were maybe a little bit scared to lose this game, because a loss here is like really bad for both of them. You know, you're giving 3 points to one of your direct rivals, and you're dropping even further behind Liverpool. So all of a sudden, Liverpool and whoever wins this are probably the two favourites for the title. So yeah, for me, it read more as both teams were kind of afraid to commit because they didn't want to lose, and that's why it ended up just being. It was quite boring. Wasn't it?
It wasn't a very exciting game, but I wouldn't say it's, as far as 0-0 ties go, it wasn't the worst 0-0 tie I ever seen. It wasn't like bad football by any stretch. I didn't get that impression. I didn't watch that closely because there wasn't a lot of chances. The chances are what makes it exciting. So maybe that's why he's not a happy Pep. Nagelsmann back to Liverpool, or going to Liverpool. Chelsea's been thrown in there. Let's see. I'm sorry. I apologize. Forget that. Nagelsmann has some Liverpool's interest. He also has Bayern interest. What do you think his best move is? Because it does seem pretty clear that they haven't said that he is the interim coach for Team Germany. What's his best move after being sacked so unfairly the year prior?
It's a tough one, because Liverpool and Bayern, there's two narratives there which are hard to step into right now. You've got the Liverpool narrative of you're replacing Jurgen Klopp. I don't care who you could be getting Pep Guardiola to replace Jurgen Klopp, and it is going to be a monumental task because he's such a legend for that club now after all these years and all the success, and maybe even another title this year. So I wouldn't envy anyone taking that job, and there's going to be such high expectations.
You want to be the guy after the guy. You do not want to be after the guy. I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to
certainly.
do that.
Like, he could come in and do fairly well, and it's probably still maybe seen as a bit of a disappointment. Whilst Bayern, obviously you had the sacking before with how it went down, never really given the full chance.
You get a chance to get booted out of the Champions League even. I mean, it was really...
Exactly. They sacked him before it all went bad. And there's a part of me that really wants him to stroll back at Bayern, step in there and be like, yeah, well, how did it go out, mate? Steps in there, wins the league title next year, and just laughs at all of them. And says, well,
you know the rumor is he's a young guy. He's not even 40 years old, and apparently he used to go to work at a skateboard, and that made Oliver Kahn insane. That's the rumor, that it made him completely insane, and also made some of the people at the board pretty uncomfortable too. Like, what we put a kid in charge of our multi-billion-dollar club. But he hadn't done that bad, and they still ended up winning the league. And Thomas Tuchel is hated. I can't even say. That's another interesting story too. What if Tuchel wins the Champions League this year? What are they going to do then? Fire him? Let him go? Because Tuchel's already announced.
Announcing this early, like, how do you step back from that if he wins the Champions League. You kind of can't, can you?
Yeah, we can't. I don't think they're going to win the Champions League this year.
Probably not.
I don't think so. I think that this team is. They're not together like Leverkusen is. They look very much apart. You've seen interviews with Thomas Muller where he's just angry, and they're clearly not as good as Leverkusen. I see some major movements next year from Bayern, and I think you're going to see a lot of familiar faces are going to disappear, and you're going to see that team completely reworked, and they're going to spend a ton of money. It'd be interesting if they bring Nagelsmann back or not, but yeah, it would be really funny if he went back in and owned the place. I think that's a much better move. Both moves have high pressure, but I do not. I think it's maybe a big reason XABI turned down Liverpool is he didn't want to be the guy after the guy. It's I've seen it so many times ago in so many different sports. You get a beloved coach like that, every fan on the earth wants to seem like they know more than they do, and the easiest way to do that is blame the coach. And that's what the media does too, because 9 times out of 10 they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to sports. It's just about getting headlines, and you're going to feed into what the fans want to hear, and they want to, hear that the administration sucks. So yeah, it'd be really funny if he did it. I do not envy Nagelsmann situation at all. I think I really wonder if getting that Bayern job, really hurts him long term, as far as being so much pressure being put on him before he really had a major European success. I think, I don't know if there's anything wrong with the guy. Team Germany looks a lot better. People are feeling a lot better about him over here going into the Euros. A win against France was huge. Shutting down, nobody really talked about it. Mbappe not being really much of a factor in that friendly. So that's another thing. What if he wins the Euros? What if Tuchel wins the Champions League and Nagelsmann wins the Euros? That would be utterly insane.
It would be crazy.
Yeah, it would be crazy. But yeah, I think I don't think Bayern ever should have brought him up for no other reason because of his age. Because I think that's the problem. He looks like a player, not a guy that can strike fear in your heart. Usually 50-year-old guys can do that a little better, and I think that's all they got. Anything you want to close with, Mr. Furman?
Check out the live streams.
Watch
more content coming soon.
Sure. So I promised it over and over again in the live streams. We're going to get the podcast, but now I'm promising we're going to get the rants. The rants are coming. We need you. Go in the Glory Hunter Discord. That's where this club is. We need you. We're looking for content creators. This is a multi-person. This is not necessarily a monetary game. This is a multi-creator project, and we're if you can make a decent video or an entertaining video about football or FIFA, or I don't care if you're even playing So Rare or something like that. If you can make really interesting football-related videos, we're really interested in it. So join us. We stream games in here. We do watch-alongs. We have really cool discussions. No gatekeeping. And we'll see you around. Take care, everybody.